Hey everyone, welcome back to She Bars Podcast. I am your host, Brooke Michelle, and today's guest is Tracey Montgomery. We are going to be discussing how she escaped her abusive narcissist ex. Hi, Tracey.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being a guest today.
You're welcome. Yes, it's good to meet you.
So, can you tell my listeners a little bit about your story of how you lived with an abusive narcissist ex and how you escaped?
Yeah, sure. So, I found my partner, came across my partner when I was a little bit older. I was 36 when I first met him. And when we first started our relationship, he was brilliant. He was the world's best at everything. We got married. We then started to live with his family. I got pregnant fairly quickly-ish after we'd got married. Had my daughter when I was 39. She was a little bit eager because she was meant to arrive when I was 40, but these things happen. And we tried for more and it didn't happen. Possibly because I was a little bit older, but things were going really well. He was a great husband. He was a great dad. Everything was going along all tickety-boo, and it was a really perfect little family. Then I'm a teacher, I'm an ex-high school teacher. I'm a qualified teacher. So at the time I was teaching in high school, chemistry teacher, and I developed a very strange illness that I didn't even know I had. I have a funny heart condition, didn't know I had it. And I basically wasn't allowed to drive. The school was 36 miles away from where we lived, so I had to stop driving. I had to leave that position because it was a bit difficult to get 36 miles when there's no transport to get you there.
Right.
And whilst I was off work, I got myself a different job, teaching online, which was fine. And he was working. He was an outdoor pursuits instructor. So we did climbing, kayaking, cycling, all of that sort of thing. So very physical. And then he got himself a job as a linesman, which is putting up telegraph poles and changing all the electricity wires and all of that sort of thing. So all very physical jobs, all quite demanding. And he was still there all the time for us until I got ill and had to pivot, work at home. And then we had this catalogue of events that started. I got ill. Then my daughter got a virus. And we thought, it's just a normal virus, which is fine. But she developed from the virus, it triggered type 1 diabetes. So the doctors missed it. We almost lost her. But I had to take in a pee sample to the doctors, and I knew when the doctor phoned up, as soon as he said it, I knew it was type 1 diabetes. Having a science background, I knew that's what it was. My car at the time, my husband had used it to get to work because he'd had to go somewhere totally different. So he came back, took us to the emergency doctor who referred us to hospital. All fine. He was great. The people that he worked for were great. They allowed him time off on full pay. Everything was going really well. This was in the January of 2014. By the time we got to the December of 2014, my then husband he developed a condition called chronic regional pain syndrome. He had an operation that didn't go quite right. And it meant that he physically couldn't do what he used to do. He actually ended up in a power chair because he couldn't walk around. And he didn't deal with either side of it. He didn't deal with the physical side, and he didn't deal with the mental side of what this condition did to him. And he became incredibly controlling, incredibly abusive. We would do things, even when we had all the adaptations within the house that we had put in place so that he could get out and about. He could take his power chair out and about. He would do things like we'd get ready to go somewhere, and 10 minutes before, it's like, we're not going.
Oh, wow.
This happened, even things like holidays. We'd have holidays booked, ready to go, and he'd go, we're not going. And then it was, I'd say, so-and-so's coming round for a meal this evening. And he'd be like, yeah, that's fine, that's great, not a problem. Again, half an hour before, they'd not come. And vice versa. We'd be going somewhere and he'd say, no, we're not going. So this sort of pattern carried on, and we sought help for his condition, and he didn't want to know. He wanted to blame because he wasn't physically capable of what he used to do, but he didn't want to take on board any responsibility. He didn't want to look for other ways to sort out what had happened. Now, I understood that he was hurting because he'd gone from being physically active to being in a wheelchair and not being able. I got that. I understood that. Mm-hmm. But he turned around and lashed out at us. Mm-hmm. And by the time we got to 2016, my daughter was 10. And he was doing things like saying that we were poisoning him. He would say that the water in the taps was poisoning him. And I'm like, well, I can't get to that. So that's not me. That we had a pool out the front of the house that we'd poisoned. And he didn't even go in it, but we'd poisoned him with that somehow. He went round, my friend's mum had just come out of hospital after having a stroke. She'd been out 4 days. He went round and said that I was trying to kill him. So...
What?
Yeah. Then when I thought, right, this is getting a bit, something is not right. This relationship is going to be going pear-shaped here. He phoned the police on us and he accused me of only going into teaching because I wanted to be with children. I mean, I taught at high school, so they were older and they were bigger, but he said the only reason was because I had paedophile tendencies. And then in the same interview, my daughter was getting all concerned because the police were in the house. So she was all upset. And he turned around to my daughter, and she's 10 at the time, and said, and she's a drug dealer. She's 10. And it was like, so he became known with our local police. He would go around to houses and accuse people of saying that we were abusing him. So the ambulance service knew about him, the local police knew about him, because it was all accusations to what we'd done to him and how we'd abused him. But at the time, he wasn't paying the bills. So it came to a point where I went in to say, why is the mortgage company phoning us? Because I've been paying the mortgage. But he hadn't, and he'd been creaming his side of the mortgage off. We lost the house. We'd accrued lots of debts because of it, and it was still all my fault and my daughter's fault. I mean, she's still a child at this stage, and he didn't take any responsibility for any of it. We did get him to go to see a psychiatrist. But as soon as he walked into the door, it was like, it's not me, it's her. She's done this.
Oh, wow.
He didn't take anything on aboard at all. So he made us homeless because we lost the house. Luckily, a friend of mine was helping us to move at the time. So we went to live with a friend. This was over Christmas as well. So this was quite good fun. Over Christmas, we had to camp out at my friend's house because he was classed as having a disability, and because my daughter, because she's type 1 diabetic, that's a disability as well. The school had got involved. So my daughter was on a safeguarding because the school were concerned about her and what was happening to her, because obviously she went into school and said, my dad said this, my dad's done that. So the school were involved as well. So the local authorities were involved. They eventually found us a house, and his best friend, who had been keeping his distance because people don't like to get involved, is what I've noticed. They want to be there and help and support, but they don't like to get involved at the time because they care for you. They love you. They don't like seeing you being hurt. So his best friend had said, I think you need to, because we had a bank account that had all the household bills going into it, and he'd been taking all the money out and everything like he does. So his best friend said, I think you need to split the bank account up now. So I was like, okay. So I went to the bank, split the bank account up. My ex signed for the bank account to go over to everything to me, so that all the bills for the new house we were on our way to be given.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't take any of this on board. He went to the bank, tried to use his card. Now, it happened straight away. So as soon as he signed over, his card ceased. It didn't work. So he went to get money out and couldn't. So we'd literally just moved into a new house, and there was a little guy, bless him. He was plumbing in the washing. We'd had the washing machine delivered and a new cooker delivered. Now, they're both electric. It took him 4 hours to plumb these in, and I kept going in and going, are you all right? And this was because the ex was there being abusive, because I'd taken all his money and he didn't know what had happened, and I'd connived to do this. And the guy fitting the washing machine kept coming out. And I said, I think I might need to call the police. And he said, I think you better call the police.
Yeah.
I ended up calling the police to remove him. And this little guy, I had to give him a cup of tea in the end, because he was also traumatized, because he didn't want to leave me on my own, because that's how abusive he was being. The police put in an order then that he couldn't come anywhere near us, which they're only ever temporary orders. So I think it was like for 3 months he couldn't come near us. We went through mediation to separate everything that way. So that sort of thing has been fine-ish. He does sort of pay some maintenance towards his daughter, even though that has dropped. And she turned 18 last weekend. So, she's now an adult. So it's quite a significant stage. He hasn't acknowledged it. He didn't even wish her happy birthday. Yeah, so that's where we are now. So I try not to talk to him unless it's a life or death situation, because otherwise he just piles back in with other things that happened in his head but didn't happen in reality. So
now that your daughter's older and of legal age, like you don't even have to deal with him anymore. Like, he's gone.
No, we haven't dealt with him as such. I mean, he's been paying some, we're talking some money. He's been paying the barest minimum, might be able to get a cup of coffee out of it. That's how much he's been paying. So we've managed without him, which is fine. And the sad thing is that when she was little, he was a great dad. He was absolutely amazing. He did everything with her. He took her swimming on the bike. But he's hurt her because he's let her down. She's got, she's got me as a support, but she hasn't got the dad side of the support. That said, she is an amazingly, I'm going to go teary now. She's just gone out.
You're like, my daughter's going on a date.
She's so strong and so independent. A lot more so than a lot of her friends around her. I've got other friends who have separated but not been through the type of things that we've been through, and she knows exactly what she wants. She doesn't take anything from anybody. If she doesn't like it, that's it. But she doesn't do it in, she's not aggressive about it. It's just like, I'm out of here type of thing. So so that side of it is quite good. It's sad that she doesn't have a dad to support her and to look after her. For me,
it's good that you're there, though. Like, that, it's great to have a mother there. So
yes, and I put so much into her, looking after her, and because she's type 1 diabetic. So when we split up, I could have gone back into a teaching job, but that would have meant that I would have been away long hours and I wouldn't have been able to give so much time to her. So when we first separated, she was 11, just 11. So she hadn't quite started our high school over here. And it was it would have meant that she would have been having to bring herself home. I would have gone before she went to school. So it's been a payoff. So we don't have as much money as some of her friends do, but we've got a house, we've got a roof over our head, we've got a car out the front. So I'm at the stage where I can now that she's older, I do now go out to work, and I've got my own business that I've been setting up as well. So that side of things has been, but I think it's taken me longer to get over it than it has her, because I made sure she was okay first. My confidence, yeah, it can be good some days, but other days it can be like, how on earth did this happen? And we're talking like, I mean, we separated Christmas of 2016. So it's quite a long time, but I think, I mean, I often say it's because when you're a little bit older, when you separate, it hits harder. And because I know that my timeline of getting over things is a little bit shorter. So yeah, the confidence thing is I have really struggled with, and I still do struggle a lot with that. I mean, even now it takes me a lot to go somewhere on my own. My circle is now small because we lost a lot of friends.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we lost a lot of friends because he would stop us from going to see people. He would, so they get bored, don't they? People get bored and they give up. So I've got a circle of a few close friends that I can call on, but it's not huge. We're talking like 4 or 5 people. So it's really small circle that I have now. And I think a lot of that as well is the trust thing, because it's your ability to trust people changes. And you wonder a lot of times if people have got an agenda, if they've got another agenda. So it's, yeah, that side of things, the trust side, the confidence side, that's what I found quite hard. And I'm still hard on myself because of it, because I'm like, why am I like this? Why don't I have my own house anymore? I'm quite intelligent. I can put things together, but it's the confidence of putting myself out there, which has been rocked an awful lot, because I feel like people judge me for being in this situation.
Yeah, I don't know how it is over you're in British. Well,
yeah, I'm in Wales I'm in Wales in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how it is over there, but like, well, I guess it's the same. But with like, whenever you go through things like this, you would think that your friends would have your back, though. Like, see, because you can notice when your friend is being abused. Because I know I've had friends who have been abused, and I'm the outspoken friend, so I'm usually like the one that says something. But it's kind of sad that your friends didn't stick around and like help you out, or try to. I like you said, a lot of people don't like coming in between things, but sometimes you have to do it.
Yeah, and I've got some of my friends, I mean, my closest friends has said she's got regrets that she didn't step in sooner and she didn't help sooner, because she didn't realize how much damage was actually being done until, I mean, even now I will in conversation say things and she's like, well, I never knew that happened. And it's because she wasn't around, because she hadn't taken it on board. So I mean, she's great. She will praise me. My best friend will praise me and say, look at how far you've come. Look at what's happened. Look at your daughter and how amazing she is. So she does do that, but she does realize as well that maybe she could have done more at the time. And that might be, like you say, it might be a British thing, because we are quite reserved over certain things. We don't like wearing our hearts on our on the outside so much. We do keep an awful lot in, which is, we are quite known for that sort of thing.
Yeah, because a lot of the British people I've met, they're not really like like, I wouldn't say like Americans, but Americans are quite aggressive. Like, I'm like, man,
more open.
Yeah.
Yeah, more open, because you're more, I mean, I have got American friends who are more willing to talk about everything that's going on. And we're like, oh, no, we don't talk about that sort of thing. That doesn't happen. No.
Like, I think you're the only British person I've ever interviewed that has been through, like, dealt with an abusive narcissist. Well, spoke about it, spoke
Yeah.
up about it. You're the first one. And I'm like, wow.
That's happened over here.
So, how does your daughter feel now? Like, everything that's been going on, and now that she's 18, how does she feel now? Like, I know she feels, I guess I wouldn't say empty without her father, but does she feel sad or anything? Like, does she still try to, like, have a relationship with him? I know it's not her job, it should be his job, but does she?
Yeah. I think up until we got to the beginning of the pandemic, she had seen him a few times, but we had to go through mediation, and we had to discuss the safety of her when she went with him, before she went with him. So he had all that in place, and he did at the time have a car. So he did come and pick her up. And because of her diabetes, sometimes she could have a hypo. So she'd drop low and she'd say, I need to stop, I need to check. And the once she came back in and she was crying, and I said, what's happened? And she said, he wouldn't stop. And I said, what do you mean he wouldn't stop? He wouldn't stop the car. He said he couldn't stop the car. She felt she was going hypo and he wouldn't stop the car for her. So she then felt that she wasn't safe. So she said, I don't want to go and see him like that again. So we changed how, because I said, do you still want to see him? Now she's pre-pandemic, so we're like 4 years ago-ish. She was 13, 14. She still wanted her dad around. So we changed it to, they used to do things like go to the coffee shop or go shopping together. So I would drop her off and I would go off and do something, and then I would bring her home, so she wasn't with him. And I think she liked it because at the time she was a young girl, and she could see, like, she'd go like, well, I want this. And he would, when she was with him, he would buy her things. I mean, we're not talking, most of it was tat. So it would be like the cheap stores he would take her into and buy her loads of rubbish that would be in the bin the week after. But he did buy her things at the time, and she saw that as a way of getting things. And then she did say, well, he's my dad, he could buy me this. So she would ask for specific things, which was quite good of her. Like, she'd want specific trainers, or she'd want a specific bag, that sort of thing. Or she was going on a school trip and she asked him to pay for it, which he didn't pay all of it, as usual. But before she saw him, we went into lockdown in the March. She saw him in the February, and she hasn't seen him since.
I don't understand how fathers do that.
Yeah, and he hasn't reached out. And I reached out because I thought she should have her dad in her life. That's how I was thinking at the time. So I reached out and said, do you want to see your daughter? And he was like, oh, I love her, I want to see her, and all of this. I'm like, well, do you? And nothing's happened. That was as far as it got. So she hasn't seen him since then. I haven't seen him. I've seen him a couple of times by the side of the road whilst he was waiting for a lift as we drove past. Other than that, I've not seen him to talk to. So I possibly wouldn't even know what he looked like now. He probably wouldn't know what his daughter looks like now, because she was a child before. She is now an adult, and she looks like an adult. She dresses like an adult. And there's certain things, she's now as she is now an adult, there's certain things about how she carries herself that I know he would disagree with. Like, she has her lashes done, she's got her nails done. She's just turned 18, so she's had a tattoo. And I know that he wouldn't agree with that. I mean, I can't stop having a tattoo because I've got tattoos. So I'm like, I can't stop you. You're 18. It's your choice. So, and it is a very nice tattoo, her first one. So I'm not going to say no.
So I have one last question, then I promise I'll let you go. So, do you think that the reason why he started acting like this was because of the injury, like what happened to him, like his medical?
I think that was the trigger, and whether he would have still been like as controlling naturally without that, I think that exaggerated everything, because I think he was scared for starters, and he was a changed person. I think the main with what happened to him, I think the fact that he didn't deal with it made him internalize things and made him angry, because he's lost his friends since as well. So he had two best friends that were always around and always saw him and came to help him out. And his one best friend is still in touch with me and asks how we are. And he says to me, have you seen him? I'm like, no. Have you? No. So he hasn't seen him either. So even though he still asks about him, he hasn't seen him. And he's like, he's been very busy with his own business, setting that up. He's got 3 kids of his own. So it's not his responsibility to keep reaching out to somebody. It should be, you know, I mean, it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think maybe it would have, I mean, I don't know, maybe it would have happened, but not to such an extent. I think the fact that he ended up in the power chair, didn't deal with it, that exaggerated things. And I think that sent it to the extreme, because he was hurt so much. He was physically changed, that changed him mentally. And I think it's just the not dealing with it that made it so extreme on his side.
Yeah, because you said that he did all this stuff before it happened, and probably it just like lowered his self-esteem and just made him feel like he was worthless and useless, which is no excuse to be an abusive narcissist. But I felt like those were like things that happened to him that triggered it. Was like, well, since I'm not doing these things, I don't want anybody else doing them, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm glad that you all are safe, and you are a fantastic mother. You are a great mom. You are. So I want to thank you so much, Tracey, for coming on my podcast and telling me your story.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been lovely.
You have a great day.
And yourself. Thank you.
Bye. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for listening to my podcast. You can follow me subscribe to my YouTube channel, Brooke_Michelle. And I have so many interviews coming up. And if you would like to visit Tracey's website, she is a menopause strategist. So if you would like to visit her website to see what her story is about and what she what she does through her being a menopause strategist, you can go to TraceyMontgomery.org and get your information there. Thank you all so much for listening to She Works Podcast. Hope you all hit that subscribe button and have a great day. See you next time.